episode of the Mamas con Ganas podcast, I'm interviewing Richelle Garcia Peña, entrepreneur, author, and lifestyle leader. Welcome, Richelle, to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I love talking to you. So I'm excited to be here.
And this has been a long time coming. Oh my God, Mamacita. Okay, so Richelle is a Mamacita I wanted to have on the podcast for a very long time for many various reasons. I've known Richelle since she was mere 13 years old. She's one of my sister's best friends. And so it's a pleasure to finally have you here on the podcast.
I know I've been listening to all your episodes and congrats on almost 200 episodes.
Yes, you're actually 211, girl.
Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Richelle, I wanted to bring you on the podcast because I think you're an amazing example of a life well lived and like an overall life well lived. And I think a lot of times, many people think that they can't live this sort of balanced life or a successful, because sometimes the word balance is I think inappropriately used, and they think like everything has to be perfect like all the time. But what I mean to say when I say balanced in your case is that you really do, I think, nurture all the different aspects of your life. And I think that's why you're a great lifestyle leader. I think it was like the procession of you becoming a lifestyle leader now and an author and like sort of sharing like how you live your life is an example, or is basically like a result of you nurturing all the different areas of your life. Now, but before we go into all of this and into the entrepreneurship and all the things that you're doing, let's start a little bit from the beginning so that people know where you're from and sort of like what got you here.
Oh my God, what a loaded question. But yes, so I was born in Miami, Florida, raised in Weston, Florida. And so how did I end up where I am today as a lifestyle leader, a mom, author? It all started, I think, after grad school. I was a pharmacist. I graduated as a pharmacist. I know that wasn't in my title. That was many years ago, but I really feel like that defined the start of my career, my entrepreneurship career. The minute I got my pharmacy license, I went from intern to pharmacy manager at the age of 25. And in pharmacy school, we didn't learn anything about leadership, about hiring, firing, sales. And I was just thrown in there. But when you're young, you're like, I was hungry to learn everything. And little did I know that those challenges that I faced, really trying to understand the business part of pharmacy, I had a lot of challenges with team members and hiring and firing. Little did I know that that was going to actually propel me and help my husband, who is a pediatric dentist, open up his practice. And why we decided to join forces together is because I had the corporate know-how. I did acquisitions as a pharmacy. Like, we bought different pharmacists. I used to work for Target, and Target is a big company. And so what that means is they had great business college, like training tools. And I even got licensed to hire, like not licensed, but a certificate. So all of these things actually helped me understand how to run a business. And I even learned marketing, how Target does their marketing and their even compliance, which is all plays into a business, right? Especially a medical business, like a dental business, you have to be in compliance. I learned that also with pharmacy. So that's how I got here today, where I am. And we'll
and then
talk
you
about
built, and then because I feel like it's and then she built.
Yeah.
You
can stop me at any time because I could just talk.
I know, but the incredible thing is that, what people might not know is that you built alongside your husband a multi-million-dollar business, right? And not only did you do that, but you were able to do that at the same time. Tell us about your family, because you have your mom. Tell us a little bit about what you were doing at the same time. You were juggling your business alongside with building a family. Tell us a little bit about that.
I had 2 babies at one time. That's like flat out how to say it. In 2011, I had my first son, and there's no manual. For any moms that are listening, there's no manual on how to raise a kid, how to have bleeding nipples, how to breastfeed, all that stuff. But at the same time, that was the same year that I helped my husband open up our pediatric dental office. So it was crazy. I had my first child, and there was a lot of instability. So we had to do what it took. We moved in with my parents with a newborn baby, from living like a beautiful apartment in the beach. And we went head in because we were so strong about like our mission and purpose. But then 6 months later, I found out I was pregnant again. And I was like, oh my God, I am still not sleeping. And I'm still trying to figure out how to do balance, right? Like balance my baby and wanting to be home with him, but I couldn't because I was growing a business with my husband and he needed me there, and we needed to do marketing and, website and get patients in the door, reviews, like all that stuff. So it was like, okay, I was juggling. I had to go to work 9 to 5. And my son was at home with a babysitter. It's not like I was at home, being able to, like, if he was sick, he stayed home. I had to go to work, but it was definitely so worth it because I knew that I was part of something that was even bigger than myself. And one thing, I don't mind sacrifice. And I sacrificed certain things back then because I knew there was like this gut in my feeling that I knew that if we just kept going forward, that in the end, I would be okay. And where we are today, and like you mentioned, we went from one little office to 7 locations in less than 10 years. We sold for 8 figures, multi-million, like crazy. And like we had 18 doctors working for us at the end. And it was challenging, but so fun. And then after having 2 kids, I gave myself a break. And then a year later, I had another baby. So I was raising 3 kids under the age of 3. At that point, we had 3 locations and we were rapidly growing. We were just growing so fast because we were serving an underserved population of children with special needs who had little to no access to care, children that were on state Medicaid insurance. And for us, it wasn't about the money. It was about being different from the dentist next door. We opened when there was 8 pediatric dentists in our city. And since we had a strong mission and purpose, it helped us really define where we're going and also build an amazing team culture that was there, not for the paycheck, but because for the difference that they were making in every child's lives every day.
And I want to go back to where you're talking about sacrifice. Because when you mentioned that, it really struck me because I do believe that that's part of what makes Richelle who she is. Like the fact that, like you said, that you don't shy away from sacrifice. And the other thing that I'm getting is that you really keep your eye on the prize. Like if
Yes.
you sort of know where you're going and what your destination is, then you know that the roadblocks that come or the sacrifices are going to be worth it. Like, what is your mindset when it comes to sacrifice? Because I think a lot of people struggle with having to give up like their comfort in the moment for a future.
Right. And it's the common saying of delayed gratification. And sacrifice is necessary to be successful because you know what? Clarity drives confidence. And what does that mean? When you're clear on where you want to go, you are confident that, you know what? I may be sacrificing X, Y, and Z, but I know in the future I'm going to get there. And, that's why like success is without struggle. And I knew that, my parents, I think it was instilled from my parents. They sacrificed a lot to come to the United States at the mere age of 21. My dad got off the plane. He had nobody to pick him up. The only thing he knew was English. It's not like he had a house waiting for him. And I saw the sacrifices as a young child that my parents made to go from, same thing. They were nurses. They became entrepreneurs. They also sold their company for 7 figures. And I saw the evolution and I saw the sacrifice. And they always brought me back to the Philippines to show me, listen, Richelle, our ancestors, we all paved the way so that every generation gets better and better. And if you can, rather than saying, oh, why me or poor me, like think about all the people who has paved the way to get for you to be where you are today. And if you practice gratitude, I mean, it all just works together.
That's beautiful. I think it speaks a lot for the values that you guys have as a family, which sort of has me step on the subject of spirituality, because I know that's another aspect and facet of your life,
Yes.
your spiritual life. Can you tell us about what that means to you and how you try to instill that into your children?
spiritual God, and everybody believes in the same God, but where I see a lot of people that stray away is because there's nothing that really centers them. And for us, we have what's called a GFB principle. It's God. It's always been God, family, and business. And I think when my husband lost his mom at a very young age, and everyone's like, "Oh, I'm praying for you," and like the power of prayer. I went to Catholic high school. We both went to the same high school, and I learned about religion. I was in, AP theology, but I think when you're young and you don't really have any struggle because my parents were together, you find God at different parts in your life. And I really found the power of prayer when his mom died. But then, what really exemplified it is when you go into business and you start struggling and you start wondering, how am I going to make it? Working out and self-care, yes, that is also necessary, but there needs to be like a higher being so that you could push through and say, you know what, I know God has my back. Going to church and really instilling that in my kids. And we talk about it every day. We're like, guys, life is going to be hard, but as long as you have somewhere that you can center you pray to God, and we've seen it work in our favor. We pray and we're like, God, please just show us a way. Just, we promise we're doing something good. We're giving back to kids. We're doing your work. Just like show us the light. And eventually he did. And like, that's where like the confidence in, I think, in prayer, really like solidified our faith.
It's really beautiful because I feel like a lot of people wonder why their life is so, let's say, off balance or out of whack, right? And it seems to me like when I look at your life, I see somebody who has like their priorities straight, right? You said God first, like this faith, this unshakable faith, that connection to the spirit, to like to God, really. And then you said family, right? So it's like the importance that you place on your partnership with your husband, which is completely evident when you started becoming an influencer not so long ago, right? But you start sharing all these things, and it's like no wonder Richelle's life works, because she
Yes.
places it a very high importance in God, and then on her husband and the partnership with him, and also her children, and then the business comes. But it's sort of
Yes.
like the foundation is set in a very strong way where things just sort of have to, at the end of the day, work themselves out. And then when you place sacrifice on top of it, it's like, okay, these are like little by little, we start hearing the key ingredients to a successful life, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you mentioned in the beginning of the interview is, I nurture what's important to me. And if you don't nurture a plant, you don't water it, it's going to die. And what I learned early on in high school, actually, and it was from the priest, he asked us one day, who do you love as a parent? Who do you think you love more, your kids or your husband? And I was like, duh, my mom loves me more. And he's like, no, you actually should love your spouse more because you're the foundation. Obviously, the love for you have for your kids is different, but once you stop like not nurturing your relationship with your husband, things fall apart because kids feel that energy. And when mommy and daddy are not good, things start to fall apart. And with our kids, there's times where sometimes we're like, okay, we got dance, we got tennis, we have so many things going on. And then my husband and I will look at each other, we're like, but we're starting to feel like roommates. And so we were like, we'll stop. And the good thing is we both recognize it. And we say, guys, we love you, but mommy and daddy are going on a weekend getaway, or we're going out to dinner. And we never let our kids give us like that guilt, like crying, like pulling our leg at the door. Of course, then when they were little, they would cry, but we never talked to them like a baby. Ever since I can remember, we would talk to them like an adult, like, Adrian, Leia, Annabelle, mommy and daddy have to go because we are the rock of the family. And we have to nurture our relationship. And I want to show them that good example so that when they get older and when they have kids, they understand that they're going to have to work on their, so that they don't have to go through a divorce with kids, because it is really hard on the kids.
Yeah, but it's interesting because as you're saying this, what I'm thinking about is all the couples that I know that have like a rock solid foundation always prioritize the couple
Yes.
and their time together. And then it's sort of like everything else falls into place when they're in good standing. And it's so true. It's like we need to nurture the romance and the
Yes.
passion and the friendship within that partnership, because sometimes, like you mentioned, life is so stressful. There's so many things that are like tugging at you that you might forget to reconnect, but it's super, super important.
It's very important, especially when you work with your husband.
Talking about working with your husband, because that's sort of like a reason why you became an author, right? You wanted to share a little bit about what that experience was like and how you were able to work with your husband successfully. Because I personally don't believe that everybody could do that. I think it's
No.
something that could be very challenging. I love my husband to death, but I don't know if I'd be able to work with him in the capacity that you were able to work with Will. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey of working with him and sort of the challenges that you faced?
Yes, absolutely. And as you mentioned, I wrote a book about it because there was a time. I mean, there are so many stories, but we don't have 5 days to tell everything. So I'm going to make it really short. There was a time that I Googled, well, first I quit. I got fired. I mean, I didn't get special treatment. And I wanted to make that really clear with our company that I was not a sacred cow as well. So there's a lot of women who work with their husband and they hide behind their husband, right? Like, oh, he's going to protect me. I am such an independent, strong woman that if I left my 6-figure salary, a doctorate degree, right, to come and build something that's even bigger than myself, you better believe I'm going to make sure that I deserve to be there and not because I'm the wife of Dr. Peña. And so, I wrote a book because one time I was Googling how to be the wife of a CEO, because I will tell you that the key to working together as husband and wife is it needs to be clearly defined who's the boss. There can't be two chiefs, right? And we didn't want to confuse our team. Like, is Dr. Peña the boss or is the wife? And I never wanted, and I never had that power struggle because he is the pediatric dentist. And together we complement each other. So I think that's number one rule is you need to clearly define he's the CEO and I was the co-founder. I did so many things in the company, basically helped bring all the patients in the office. Like I was the secret sauce, and he says it all the time. He's like, without Richelle, like he knows the dental, right? I came in with all my business knowledge, although he has his MBA. When you have an MBA but you have no working like practice, it doesn't mean as much. No offense to anybody who does. My husband has an MBA, so it doesn't offend him either. And so, we had the same vision and purpose for growing our business, but there were definitely those challenging times. And I think the breaking point for us was taking a personality test and understanding, how we are in our personal lives. I'm fun. I love to dance. And same thing with him, when we get to work and when we have to make very difficult decision, that is when you really can tell, like, okay, are you guys going to make it or break it? Is this something that you make it together? And when we did it's called the DISC personality test. Have you ever taken one before?
Yes, absolutely. Very
There's
interesting.
Myers-Briggs, this test. And that's when we hired a leadership coach. We had a corporate office. We were growing rapidly, and we had a core admin team. And for me, leadership I actually brought her in because I believe that the other secret to our success is we taught all of our managers and our admin team leadership through bringing in this business coach. She made us take this personality test. And when we took it, he's like, oh my God, now I know why you're like X, Y, and Z. And then I understood why he was like, very, determined, dominant, the traits of like pushing the company forward, making tough decisions. We had complementing personalities. And then I think the key to working with your husband is understanding each other's strengths, weaknesses, and where he's strong, I'm weak. Where I'm weak, he's strong. And if you put those together, that is what makes a power couple. And I don't believe that everybody can work together.
Yeah.
100%. I agree.
Yes. And it's interesting what you said, that it's the balance of your weaknesses and strengths, and like knowing that the other person is going to be your fortress, maybe where what you're not so strong at. I think that's very key, because if both people are competing, and for example, when you mentioned about, there has to be like one top leader, I find that very courageous, because I feel like a lot of people are like on ego trips, and it's like instead of working with their husband, you could end up competing with
Oh
your
yeah.
spouse, which then creates even more like animosity and even more like friction with that person. And I think in reality, no matter who we work with, it's sort of like there has to be some understandings of, bringing in your strengths and allowing the other people to bring in their strengths when it's not so, it's not your forte.
Yeah, because in a team dynamic, you don't want everybody with the same personality
Oh,
because you
absolutely.
don't, an accountant, they need to be what's a C, right? The concise, look at every detail. And then I'm a DI. So like I am very dominant as well, and I'm very determined. So how Will and I worked it out, and this is going to be in my book as well, is he was a CEO at work, right? But at home, I was a CHO, the chief home officer, because I needed power in something as well. And he was like, oh my God, at home, like, although we make decisions together, I basically do our social calendar, what we're going to eat. I mean, being a mom, you are a leader too, because you got to get everybody riled up together and make sure that, everything flows well at home. Because if not, fine, you may have a great work environment, but then if you get home and it's chaos, I mean, that's where the balance comes
Oh
in.
my gosh, absolutely. And it's so interesting that you said that because I literally said it on the podcast episode that I recorded yesterday about how, like, in the home, it is. I'm like the chief home officer.
Yeah.
It's like, and if you don't feel as a person, I think it's not even a gender thing. If you don't feel as a person that you sort of have the reins on something in your life, like you're empowered
Yes.
in an aspect, you feel like there's something missing. So when it does become to like important decisions in the household, I do feel like I have more say. And then when it comes to decisions, obviously in my husband's business or just things where it kind of intersects, where our personal life intersects with his business, it's sort of like then my husband has the upper hand because I do feel like there has to be that balance. And two people need to feel empowered in a couple.
Exactly. And if there's that power struggle, you can't work together. And if you don't, I think the key is understanding the strengths and weaknesses. And also, if you want to go into business with your husband, you both have to be rowing the same way, right? And you have to have believe in your purpose of why are you in business? What makes you different? Because when your team is clear on that, that's how you build camaraderie and like those cheerleaders who really like love working for you and loyalty. And if I was rowing a different way, he was rowing a different way, people would get confused. And truthfully, if you look at it, whenever you struggle in anything in life, you got to go back to why. Well, if I want to lose weight and I'm on a diet and you're like, you have one day where you're like, oh, why am I doing this anyways? I just want to eat whatever I want. Well, you got to go back to why. Did your doctor say you need to lose weight or you're going to go on medicine? And just like in business, when things don't go your way and it is a roller coaster ride of ups, downs, and when you go through those hard moments, we always went back to the why. Well, why are we in business? We're in business to help children. They need us. Without us, they wouldn't have no dental home. And because we were both so clear on that, like when he was down, like, oh, I don't know, God's not helping me, it's not working, I would be the first one to be like, hey, keep an eye on the ball. Like, we are doing something so good. And that's why our offices are busy. We just need to now get lean and mean and work on operations in our business so that we can, get past this. Because you can't control what's happening outside. You can't control that COVID happened, right? I mean, that was another scary time, but we can control what we do inside our business, and you can control how you react to them.
Yes, I love that. It's almost like the vision needs to be so crystal clear and it has to be a unified vision is what is
Yes.
listening to because and this is the key honestly in all the different aspects. Like for example, a lot of um couples struggle also financially together because they're not holding a vision for their finances together. Like they don't come
Yes.
together and like plan their finances. It's sort of like they don't even communicate what their financial plans are. And one
Right.
person is thinking one thing and the other person has other they've both been raised by different like sort of money stories. And so they don't
Right.
even agree what their money is going to be for. Like some people want to save everything, other people want to spend everything. But if they would just come together and sort of communicate and create a unified vision for what they wanted, I think their entire life would change. And that's what you're telling me here is that you both were very clear, crystal clear on where you were going and where it was headed. Did that have to do do you think that has to do a lot with the communication with your spouse? Like how do you create a clear vision with your partner?
Communication is leadership. I mean, that's like in one sentence. And in business and in work, and in business and at home, Will and I, we have really good communication skills. And I know that the number one reason why people get divorced is either money or communication. You can't communicate. If you don't communicate how you're feeling, then you hold grudges. And like, you mentioned, if you're not clear on, well, what you want, let's say you want to travel, but your husband doesn't like to travel, you have to meet a common ground, because then you start to become disgruntled, you start to have resentment. And so communication is something that we work on a lot. And as I'm Asian, I'm Filipino American, communication wasn't a big thing in my house. And my parents are very, like if they fought behind doors. And they weren't very expressive. But holy crap, my husband's Latino. I was like, whoa. I mean, he actually brought it out in me to be a good communicator, and which I think what makes him such a fabulous father and leader, because he is like a straight shooter. He doesn't care if it's going to hurt your feelings or not, but he has to say what he has to say. If not, when you hold those things in, then it's going to like fester into resentment. And then that's where things start to go wrong, like infidelity, or, like it's just like a recipe for disaster. So communication is so key.
This podcast is brought to you by Cash App. Cash App has the tools that make saving easier. Start building towards your savings goals $1 at a time. Need some ideas for things you can start saving for? How about a trip to Paris? Ooh la la. Or that course you've been eyeing that you know will take your business to a new level. What about a new laptop? A comfy new mattress? Or those diamond earrings you simply love? Reaching your goals, whatever they may be, is faster with Cash App's roundups and offers. You're paying yourself even while you're paying someone else. And while your money in Cash App is building, you could be literally doing anything other than thinking about it. It's like financial self-care. That's money, that's Cash App. Download Cash App from the App Store or Google Play Store to start saving today.
I think a lot of times women also, just because we're like such people pleasers, sometimes I see women that have a hard time expressing themselves and where they're not satisfied in their marriage. And I always say, you have to, it's sort of like we have to plant as women, even if we're like the flowers, right? We have to sort of put like a flag of like, you do not step past this. And this is my flag, and you don't push the flag down. It's sort of like almost, I say we almost have to step into our masculine in order to put those like boundaries, and we have to learn how to say no. And like you said, communicate effectively. Otherwise, like the person that might have the stronger personality or the more masculine energy might trample all over us. And I always tell my husband, I'm like, it's so important. It has been so important for me to be vocal about what I want and what makes me unhappy, because if not, then I feel like the world would just like bulldoze right over me.
No, and you're 100% correct. Part of, being an effective communicator and leader, you have to go through hard times. And when I was a manager, I was so scared to communicate with, these two team members that I was having issues with, because I needed to get them to be, where the company needed them to be. But since I was a people pleaser, I had to work with these individuals for 12 hours out of the day. I didn't want them to be mad at me. I wanted to be the nice boss. And let me tell you, I learned really quickly. I mean, I cried. I would come home crying, asking my husband, like, oh my God, I'm so nice. Like, he's like, well, you need to stop being so nice and really say what you need to say and get what you need, communicate effectively, be nice, but be firm. And that's something that I learned along the way. Like, I am not the same person I was when I was 25 years old, because life has a way of teaching you so many lessons, and what you resist will persist. So if you resist having that difficult conversation, which I think a lot of women have a hard time doing, that difficult conversation, you will struggle both at work and at home as well, even with your kids, right? You have to lead with love. And if you don't like reprimand your kid, you don't discipline them, then you're not really like showing them the best love ever. You're really being selfish because, oh, I don't want them to hate me. I don't want to be the bad guy. Well, unfortunately, you're their mom and you're their parent, and you have to discipline these kids. If not, they're going to go into the real world like wild animals. And, people comment us all the time on how, respectful my kids are. They're very, they just like, they're just really calm kids, because we also lay those like foundations of leadership at home. So it's really like being a leader at work has helped me so much be an even better mom.
I love it. I love it. Now, I want to veer a little bit towards like a little bit more of your personal life, right? Because I think one of the interesting things, because we went over the business, we went over the partnership and God and spirituality, the kids, but like there's even more to Richelle. So like there's the Richelle also that with her husband travels a ton. You are like I think a travel lover, right? I would
Yeah.
consider you that.
I'm a wanderlust.
Yes, you're like the epitome of a wanderlust. I mean, you'll see Richelle in like Bali, or I mean, you've been to so many places around the world, and you'll see her and you'll take all your three kids with you, and you've been showing them the world since they've been very young. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, you know, one thing that Will and I love, and we both got it from our parents, my mom, the love for travel came from my mom, because when she came from the Philippines, her goal was to see all 50 states before we went to college. And the reason for that is the United States was new to her. She wanted to explore all the different countries, and every break, she already had our vacation plans. So, and my husband, the same thing. Both our parents owned their own businesses, and that was their escape from the chaos. And that's actually what we did as well. And, you know, as like a parent tip, when you bring kids into the world, they adjust to your life, not the other way around, right? And I think that's what we've been very clear of. Oh, but Johnny has to go to sleep at this time, and so we can't do this. Nope. Well, I know it's his bedtime, but we're hungry and we want to go out to dinner. So they're going to behave. Obviously, there's a time limit sometimes with kids, but we would take them in the stroller, and eventually, you know, they will rise to your expectations. If you expect them to have a tantrum, not behave, guess what? They're not going to behave. But if you set good expectations and you know, you take them out, you go outside your comfort zone, right? So we went with three kids under 3 all the way to Hawaii. That was like 2 planes, long plane trips. And we had so many people stop us. They're like, do you guys need help? We're like, no, we're fine. Was it difficult? Absolutely. We went to Iceland, and there was like no big name brand hotels. The food was kind of weird, but we just love to travel and show our kids that the United States is great, but there's so many other parts of the world, and we want to show them also like, you know, the poverty, so that they can really practice gratitude at such a young and early age and be like loving human beings.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. And I love the part about, because I feel like we live in a society where it's like you said, it's like parents are trying to assimilate to their kids instead of the other way.
Yes.
And I also do not abide by that philosophy. The fact that like we need to all, you know, just switch our schedules around for the kids. I feel like when it's the other way around, when the child understands that they become part of a family unit and that they have to sort of assimilate themselves to the family and what the family is about, then it teaches them discipline. It teaches them respect also, which is, I think, something that has been a little bit lost in the recent times. And I think at the end of the day, they end up growing from it, and they end up growing faster. Like they end up, you know, like you're saying, they end up going to restaurants where it might be outside their comfort zone because they might be tired, but they realize, okay, well, even when I'm tired, there's a certain way that I have to behave. There's a certain,
Yes.
you know, there's certain manners that I still have to abide by. Just because I'm tired doesn't mean I'm going to throw a tantrum. So I do think it's highly important to be able to teach those things to our children.
Yeah, and my kids are not perfect by any means, and we're not perfect either. But you know what? It's from the mistakes that you grow and you learn, you know, like, oh my God, like we shouldn't have gone out at this time. He was already cranky. So we're like, okay, next time we know. So, you know, and we like to show kids, like sometimes they'll not behave. And we're like, guys, you know, we just spent so much money on like this great restaurant, and look how you guys behave. And then they'll look back and they're like, we're so sorry. But if we just reprimand them and not allow them to make mistakes, okay, we understand you made the mistake. What can we learn from it? And that is when they start to grow, right? And obviously, because we owned a pediatric dental office, we saw some kids like that. It's just they're the parents. They're the ones who rule the house. And I think that was also a driving force for my husband and I to be like, oh no, like we cannot put kids out in this world that are so entitled, because you're just going to do more damage than good. The minute they face adversity or rejection, they're just going to crumble.
Oh my God, that's so true. It's interesting because I had a conversation with one of my child's therapists, and he was saying about how those children that grow up in those homes where they're like the sun and all the other people are the planets rotating around them, that those kids that grow up in that environment end up resenting their parents in the long run. Because when they go out in the real world and they realize they're actually not the sun and that everybody else is not the planets rotating around them, they get really angry because they feel like almost like my mom and dad didn't teach me.
Right.
And now they have to suffer even harder. It's sort of like when you learn very important lessons early on in life, it's so much easier because the consequences are not as harsh. But when you're learning those very important things later on in life, the consequences can be very, very like harsh.
I know. And that's how you can, you know, I think when you want to open up a business or do anything in life, reach a goal, the first thing you have to have is the right mindset. And if, as a child, they're building it now. And if you don't teach them that, and that's our role as parents, is to parent them and guide them. Like when they get into the real world, they're going to crumble, and then they're going to face mental health issues and then go through therapy and, find out the hard way. And some people will overcome it, but there's some that they can't.
Yeah, absolutely. No, mindset is everything. And I know you speak a lot about that topic. Now, just to kind of finish the circle, I wanted to talk about like health and fitness, because interestingly enough, it's another area where I really admire Richelle. So if you follow her on Instagram, and she's going to give you all the contact information so you can do so at the end of the episode. Richelle, you'll see her like working out, and she's fit. She's a mom of 3, but she's a total MILF.
Just like you, Val.
She's been a MILF since I've known her. Like she's always been fit. And like actually recently she gave me, I actually started hiring some people that help her with the training and stuff like that, right? That do this course. And it's been like awesome for me because I'm tracking my macros, and I've started and I've started doing weights again. And honestly, it was highly like I think inspired by your post on Instagram. So tell us a little bit about how you have always prioritized your health. And for those people listening that feel like, okay, if you have a business and you have kids, there's definitely no time for like taking care of yourself and putting your body and like the importance of your nutrition and your exercise as a priority. Can you talk a little bit as to like how you're able to do that?
Yes. As you mentioned, a lot of people like to say busy. I'm too busy for that. And if you take a step back and you just write a list of what's really important to you, you'll start to realize that you're going to find time for the things that you want to nurture. And for me, I think when I hit 40, I don't know, something happened where I was like, okay, that's it. I know as a pharmacist, when you hit the age of 40, you take an average of 1 pill every year, because, we're getting older, we're not as young. And I want to make sure that I not only set a good example for my kids, but also I don't want to take medicine at an early age, because I do have history of diabetes, heart, high cholesterol, heart, high blood pressure, osteoporosis, and that's why I started doing weights, because I'm Asian and I don't want to get brittle. And then one fall lead me into a wheelchair later on. I know I'm still you have to be proactive. And that's where I really started getting into like the weight training and that fitness. But if you take a step back, like 10 years ago, what really got me into fitness is the stress from work. And from growing a business and being a mom and feeling that I need time for me. Like, you need to love yourself first before you can love anybody else. You need to give yourself that energy. So when you go to work or when you're with your kids, you can give them the best part of you. Right. And so for me, like, I mean, it shows that working out releases endorphins. Endorphins are what makes you happy. And I prioritize it, and I put it as like a non-negotiable. If I know that I can't work out during the week because I'm working and I'm taking care of the kids in the afternoon, then it needs to be in the morning. So you have to have discipline. I have to go to sleep a little bit earlier than most people. But because I really have created this as part of my life, and not like, oh, I'm not trying to do it to like have a sexy body. Truthfully, I'm doing it because I want to be healthy. I think it's healthy for my mind, and it's the best drug for stress reliever and for struggles. Like, I don't know, if you fighting with your husband or your kids and you're just like, I just need a moment to breathe. Well, this is like my moment to breathe. And when I wake up in the morning, the other day, the Peloton wouldn't work and the treadmill, and it was my cardio day. I was like furious. I was like, oh my God, what happened? And I was like, you know what? No problem. I took the mat and my weights. I put on an online Pure Barre class because I love bar. And I was literally doing it in the middle of the kitchen because, that's how strong my mindset is. Like I'm not quick to anger. And that's something that like I had to, people have to work on, is like, okay, if something goes wrong, let's pivot. Not worry about it, because now you're wasting time.
I love that. I think a lot of us get stuck sometimes when we get frustrated. And like you said, like that's a classic example. You wake up super early. What time do you wake up? Like at 6? You start
Between 5 and 5:30.
There you go. Between 5 and 5:30. She's like my husband. You're like my husband. I like my workouts a little bit later. But Richelle wakes up super early to do her workout. So like, you wake up and obviously it's a sacrifice already. And then you start wanting to do your thing and then the things don't work. And it's like, and then anybody else would kind of go, okay, well, it's just not happening today. It's like that perfect excuse not to do the thing that you set out when they're not working.
No. My husband was already doing weights that day and he was like getting frustrated, trying to help me. He's like, no, put your ear pods on because I want my music for my weights and my ear pods. My daughter had, I mean, it was crazy. I could have made, see, that's the thing. You can make every single excuse not to do something. But once you recognize that you're making excuses, like I quickly recognize, no, I'm not going to let this ruin my time because this is important to me. He came out, he's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm working out. Like, I don't care if the machine's broken. You don't want me there with my music. So I'm going to go outside in the kitchen with my dog, half on my mat. And I felt so good afterwards. But it all starts with your mindset. Like that's like key.
So what do you do in order to create, you think, a positive mindset or a mindset that's conducive to the type of thing you're talking about, where you're just, you're resilient? What do you think is your like key to a good mindset?
It is practicing like just gratitude. If you can change like your glasses, change your perspective when something doesn't go your way, understand that, it's not happening like to you, it's happening for you. So when there's a setback, you didn't get what you wanted, know that it happened for a reason and, you need to try harder. And I really believe that just being grateful that I can move and saying, you know what, how many people would love to work out at this time? How many people would love to have kids? How many people would love to be in your shoes right now? I think once you can start saying, God, thank you for everything that I have in my life and just practice that every single day, it really helps. Like my gratitude cycle started honestly in my early 30s. It's not like, I didn't wake up like this out of my mom's belly, or not even in my 20s, right? In your 20s, you're so selfish. You're just worrying about yourself and everything for you. And then you get into your 30s and then you start hitting, life starts to hit you in the face real fast. And when you can take a step back and say, oh my God, he closed that door for a reason. Like that was closed for a reason. And this person was put in my life for a season, for a reason, to help you grow. And once you can change your perspective and see the good in everything and not always see the negative, I think that's like key.
I love that. Okay. What about productivity hack? Any productivity, like if you were to say, okay, this is what makes me able to do all of these things that I want to do, what would you say is like your number one productivity hack, or two?
A couple of productivities. How do I say, really productive? Because if you look at my calendar, I'm not kidding you, every like 30 minutes, an hour, everything is like, I plan things very strategically in my iPhone calendar. And that's because I have a to-do list that I created yesterday. So I already know what I'm going to do today, because I don't want to wake up with that anxiety of, oh my God, I got to do this, I got to do that. And it's not written down. But when you create that list of all the things there's a lot of things, trust me, there's so many things that we all have to do, but it's really prioritizing, like this needs to get done. Because if this doesn't get done, then it's going to be a catastrophe. So, and prioritizing what's important to you. So if reading a book is important to you, if working out or making sure that you're there for your child's ballet class, if those are important to you, you have to plan things around that, your schedule. But and I loved your podcast on this one, is the power of saying no. And as women, we're people pleasers, and I'm a Gemini, I'm an extrovert. I don't know, I'm like everybody's biggest cheerleader. I love so hard. And if you're my friend, you know it, because I nurture like all my friendships because it's important to me and my family. But the power of saying no, I learned that when I had 3 kids under 3 and a business, and my husband's like, you're really going to kill yourself. Like you're not kill yourself, but like, you're really going to,
yes.
You're going to burn out.
Burnout. It's so true. When we say, because when you say yes to something, you're saying no already to so many things. So when you say no, you can actually say yes to the things you want.
Yes. And that was an eye opener for me. And I was like, no. Cause like for me, I'm all about integrity and my word. If I told you I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there. But there's some times where, you know, I had to slowly let that go and say, you know what? No, I can't be there because my family is more important, or this is more important, or my own sanity and my sleep is more important. So creating those, you know, that's how you be productive is number one, understanding and prioritizing what's important to you, creating boundaries and saying no. And really the night before, write all the things that you're going to do tomorrow that must get done. And at the end of the day, you go and you look at your list and you scratch them off. And then you create the list already for tomorrow so that you already know, okay, there's no negotiables. Like if your friends are calling you and you know that you have to get this thing done, you put your phone away and you get it done.
Richelle,
Yeah.
what tell us where we can find all of your, like, where we can follow you, where people can find you so that they can see the amazing life that you do have and so that they can get inspired. Because I personally get inspired by you all the time, and I feel like women like you allow me, like, even like the possibility to dream that I can have a very colorful life.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much. You can follow me on Instagram at Richelle Peña _. Or you can go to richellepena.com. That's my lifestyle website. And most recently, my husband and I opened a consulting business for business owners to really help them navigate through those tough waters that we went through. And I truly believe in coaches. We had one, and honestly, that's what took our company to the next level. When you know what you know, and when you're in the weeds, sometimes you need help, and that's whether that's your personal life or in your business. So we have a holistic approach where we want to make sure that people are happy both in their personal and at work. And that is rpwconsultants.com.
I love that. It's sort of like the natural progression to what everything that you guys have built. And, you know, for the person that's listening, like, this is interesting because keep in mind, Richelle was literally a person that you're retired, able to retire at the age of what? You were how old when you sold your businesses?
39.
39. Exactly. And you could have just said to yourself, oh, I just want to sort of like cruise through life. And people think that's like, you know, the way to be. Because that was another thing you discovered afterwards. Okay, no, now I have another purpose.
Yeah. No, I truthfully I took a couple of years off because the roller coaster was insane. I needed a break. I think I needed a mental break of all the stress and the honestly, the anxiety that I'm really good at, like holding in my like anxiety through working out and all that stuff. But like you take your husband's, like when he's anxious, I'm like, okay, calm down. And I wanted to be part of something bigger than myself again. And I you know, I feel like in life, there has to be a purpose why you wake up every morning. And I wasn't feeling it anymore. I was like, what am I doing? Like, yes, I'm taking care of my kids and doing things around the house, but I felt like I learned so much in the past 10 years of being business that I need to give back, and I want to help those people who were in my shoes in the past and truthfully pay it forward.
That's amazing. So you started writing your book. Now you're doing the tour. You're going like around in the press. Like you're literally becoming known. It's really tell us what that journey has been like, because that's very recent.
Oh my God, I literally started this journey in February. And the reason why I started is because last New Year's, I didn't know what to say, something fabulous that I accomplished that year, because every year would, you know, talk about what we accomplished. And I was like, no, this year is going to be different. And my husband, who's my biggest accountability partner, I swear he's like my life coach and I'm his. He's like, Richelle, I need you to stop talking what you're going to do and just do it. And that's the hardest thing for anybody who wants to accomplish something, is just taking that first step. And when I realized that I took a first step into opening my life to everybody and this lifestyle leader, like who's going to want to know about me? I'm nobody famous. But when I started getting the messages like, oh my God, I love this. Like, thank you for recommending this. I knew that I was onto something big, and just like slowly doors started opening. I was part of like women entrepreneur groups such as Entreprenista. I met other fabulous women, and I want to be elevated and I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I want to be around other people that can teach me, that I can grow. And I started getting the press because, you know, you have to be validated, unfortunately, from like the outer world. I know who I am. There's no imposter syndrome here, but how am I going to get other people to trust me if I don't have any validity from like the outside world? And so I did get a PR agent, Sabina, for anybody who needs it. I'm not afraid to share how I got press, who runs Press for Success. She is amazing. And she understands me so much and my journey. And she's just like, I don't know how you're not discovered. And she's become my biggest cheerleader. And when she goes to pitch me to news stations like, Forbes and NBC, they're like, oh my God, we need to meet them. So yeah, I've been doing TV interviews about friendships. I'm going to now start a round on business, on anybody who's afraid to start business, like what it takes. So that, and then a bunch of podcasts, and it feels good to like, not for the TV and being on TV, being famous. No, I know that for everybody that's listening, if I just can touch one person one a day, or help one person once a day, to me, that's like goals.
Amazing. And I think it's like, looking at you and seeing your life and knowing you from so young, it's like, yes, this totally makes sense. Because I think all of us that have seen you grow and like prosper and become the woman that you have become, it's like, how does Richelle do all this? And it's really cool how like when you just sort of opened up your life, like, yeah. And you are a person that's very generous. Like Richelle is somebody who and I think that this is like a key to a lot of successful women, is that when they become successful, they're not like shy about sharing how they become successful, or like giving out, like when I tell her, oh my God, your pictures are beautiful. This is the photographer I used, girl. When, I asked her something about the house. Oh, this is the person that I used for like organizing it. And it's really cool because you really do elevate everybody around you, and you're always looking to be elevated.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's key to life. And we can leave it at this: is when you lead with love, what do you get back? Love. And it's okay. Like if someone doesn't say good morning to you, you just say good morning and you continue walking on, like, and lead everything you have to do with love, because people can tell if you're not genuine.
Yes, yes. And with joy, because I see you that you inject a lot of things with joy. So anyways, if you guys have any questions or comments for Richelle on this episode, go to mamasconganaspodcast.com/211, mamasconganaspodcast.com/211. Thank you so much for being here with us today and for sharing all your nuggets of knowledge and information.
Oh my God, thank you for having me. This was so fun. It was like talking to a best friend. So anybody who wants to DM me questions, honestly, I'm happy to answer them. And thank you, Valentina, for the opportunity.
Besitos. I'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Hey, it's Valentina Azara. I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. Thank you so much for liking, sharing, and subscribing to our motivational channel. If you have any questions or comments, visit our website at mamasconganaspodcast.com or follow me on social media at mamasconganas. And remember, don't be a mama con drama. Let's be mamas con ganas.